let's talk about something really profound, a dynamic that's both incredibly powerful and sometimes deeply painful. We're diving into the bond between mothers and daughters, and these invisible patterns that just seem to echo across generations.
Have you ever been there? You're in a conversation, maybe an argument, and you get this weird sense of déjà vu. It feels like you're both playing out a script that you never wrote, that you never even agreed to. If that sounds at all familiar, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to unpack why that happens. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about what this inherited pain actually is. Then we'll look at the psychological engine that keeps it running. We'll walk through a story to see it in action. And finally, we'll explore a really powerful framework for breaking that cycle and building something new.
All right, first up, let's get right to the heart of what we're actually talking about here. Because this isn't just about learned behaviors or, some bad habits passed down. It's something much, much deeper.
And this is the absolutely crucial point. A mother might be completely determined to give her daughter a better life, to avoid all the mistakes of the past, but somehow, without even realizing it, she can end up recreating the exact same emotional environment she grew up in. This isn't a failure of love, not at all. It's a pattern of pain that's operating just beneath the surface.
Okay, so why? Right? Why do these patterns have such an incredibly powerful grip? Well, it turns out there's this unseen mechanism at play, an engine that keeps the cycle running. It really comes down to two key psychological ideas working together.
First, we've got a concept from the psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow. Now, think of it like this. It's your emotional blind spot. It's where you've tucked away all the feelings you don't want to deal with: fear, insecurity, vulnerability. And because you don't see them in yourself, your mind does this tricky thing where it unconsciously projects them onto somebody else. And so often, that person is a daughter.
Now, the second piece of the puzzle is something called psychological continuity. This is the subtle but incredibly powerful belief that I am a single, solid person who's been the same from childhood all the way up until now. This idea, it acts like superglue. It takes the old wounds and fears from the past and glues them directly onto your identity in the present, making them feel like they're still happening right now.
So, theory is one thing, but let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. This story, this sort of case study, makes these abstract ideas incredibly clear. So, we start with a mother, and her intentions are completely pure. She vividly remembers the pain of her own childhood, and she vows to do things differently for her daughter. She just wants to provide all the love and security that she never had.
But here's the turning point. As her daughter becomes a teenager and naturally starts to seek independence, the mother's own unhealed fear of abandonment, her shadow, gets triggered. And that deep, protective care suddenly twists and transforms into something that looks and feels like suffocating control and intense anxiety.
And this is the result. The daughter is no longer just her daughter. She's become a screen for the mother's unresolved past. The relationship gets trapped. It's not a connection between two individuals in the present moment anymore. It's become a painful replay of a wound from a generation ago.
So how on earth do you break a cycle that runs this deep? Well, the answer might lie in a pretty radical shift in perspective. We're going to look at the Buddhist concept of Anatta, or non-self, not as a religious belief, but as a really powerful psychological tool.
What Anatta offers is a different way to see your own inner world. So instead of seeing your thoughts, your fears, or even your role as mother or daughter as a fixed, solid identity, you start to see them as temporary events. They just arise, and then they pass away. And this is the exact framework that can start to dissolve that superglue of psychological continuity we talked about.
And this illustrates the two paths so clearly. When we see the world through the lens of a fixed, solid self, we get stuck in projection and repetition. It's a trap. But when we start to perceive through Anatta, we release that fixation. The whole power dynamic shifts, and you create space for emotional equality, where both people can just be without carrying all the weight of the past.
So what does this actually look like in the relationship? When you stop identifying so strongly with the story of who you are, what happens to that painful generational echo?
Well, here's how the chain actually breaks. First, you just loosen the grip on a fixed identity. That breaks the chain of psychological continuity. And suddenly, those old wounds aren't me anymore. They're just experiences. And from there, the shadow loses its target. There's no solid self left to project onto. And the most amazing part? The pattern just dissolves. It runs out of fuel all on its own, without a fight.
And this is just so crucial.
The goal isn't to become some healed or perfect person. It's actually about letting go of the whole project of self altogether. And the result is something far more beautiful. A relationship that exists right here, in the now, open, stable, and finally free from the ghosts of the past.
You know, this summary just says it all, doesn't it? When the mother is not the past and the daughter is not the future, repetition falls silent and the relationship exists. The echo stops and all that's left is the relationship, just as it is, right now.
So, I'll just leave you with this final thought. What if our identity isn't some fixed story that we have to defend, but more like an ever-changing process we get to experience? How might that one simple shift change everything in our most important relationships?